Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I wanted to take a look at a project I'm working on to give you guys just an example of how you might use bus tracks and synth tracks during the actual mixing process. So I'm using a few different synths, doing a few different things with synths, and I have a couple different buses. And I'm just gonna kind of walk through what I've done in the mixer to hopefully just give you a better idea. So the first thing I want to point out is this reverb synth track right here. You can see it's one of the 4 docked synths on the right. And yeah, I've just renamed it Verb, and I have a Fruity Convolver on it. And so essentially this reverb is the reverb that all of my sounds end up going through, because it is kind of a shorter reverb. You can hear if I play this clap sound and turn that reverb off. It's not a particularly huge reverb, so it's not going to wash out my sounds. So it's perfect for both my drums and my synth sounds. In other cases, if I had a much longer reverb for my synth sounds, I would probably have made another reverb synth that I would end up using for certain synth sounds, maybe certain background ambient sounds. But for this track, it's just this one. And you can see, pretty much all of these tracks are going to be routed through that. All my drum sounds, if you look down there, they're all routed through it some amount. So speaking of drums, let's take a look at what I've done with the drums. So here's pretty much the prototype drum beat I made for this track. It has all the drum sounds playing. It's the complete loop that I ended up kind of, breaking down into the separate sounds and playing the sounds a little bit differently throughout the actual track. But this is just, the prototype drum beat. And so when you see this, you'll see all of these sounds playing. And so all of these are different pitched 808s. And so they're all routed through that 808 track. The 808 is routed through that reverb, and all of these drums are routed through that reverb. And then it's also routed through the drum bus, as are all of the other drums. So, if I turn off that reverb and turn off the drums, you won't hear anything. So the drums are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Each drum sound has its own mixer track, and then they all get routed through the drum bus. I don't have much processing on it right now. I just have a soft clipper, but there's the possibility that I might EQ it or compress it or do something later on if I need to. Like I said, this is still a work in progress. So let's look at the synth sounds. And the synth sounds are a little bit different. So I have a few different synth sounds. I have this kind of main lead sound here that plays a few different ways. And it is routed through this track here. And then, so here's how it sounded originally. But I wanted to do some parallel processing. So I've sent it through this track, and you can see it's called Grit, and essentially it has the a bit crusher and a chorus. The bit crusher is to kind of make it have that lower quality sound to it. The bit crushed sound. And then the chorus just softens it up a little bit. It adds some stereo width. because you can hear without the grit layer, it's completely mono. But with that chorus, it adds some stereo to it. And so the original sound is going through that parallel processing track to have that bit crusher and the chorus. And then it's also routed through this track here. And the grit track is routed through this track here too. So this track is just a way for me to combine these two. Essentially, they're kind of layers. Yeah, I'm doing parallel processing, and then I want to combine those so I can process them as one single sound. And you can hear if I turn this off, it just mutes that whole sound. So here's what the grit sounds like on its own. And then here it is with the original sound as well. So I did this for a few of the different synth sounds. You can see I have, square lead, grit, and then here's the overall square lead layer combined into one track. And from there, you can see I routed it to a synth bus. So I'm doing the parallel processing with these two tracks, and then I'm combining them into this track so I can process it as a single sound. And then I route this track through the reverb and also through that synth bus. And essentially I do this for the slide lead as well. You can see I'm doing the parallel processing. It's the same thing, the bit crusher, the chorus. And then both these tracks are routed through the slide lead track, which just allows me to process both of these as one sound. And then that is routed through the reverb and the synth bus. And then the last sound I'm doing it with is also these chords. So you can hear the chords here. And so it's the same thing, it's the original sound routed through that parallel processing. And then both of these tracks are combined so that I can process them as a single sound in this track, which is then sent through the reverb and also sent through the synth bus. But then I have a couple other sounds that aren't processed in the same way. So they're a lot more straightforward. I have this acid sound. And that acid sound is just sent through the reverb and also through the synth bus. And that is also the same case for the arpeggio sound. It's just sent through the reverb and then routed through the synth bus. So if I turn off that synth bus and play the track, all of the synths are muted. And so the only processing I currently have on the synth bus is a sidechain compressor. And that's this sidechain here. It's sidechained through that synth bus. And here is the sidechain track. Essentially, it's just a kick sample that I've kind of altered the envelope of. And then I match the notes that the kick plays on, and then also the notes that the snare plays on. And so I've just done some sidechaining there. And then you can see it happening if I play the drop while looking at this compressor, the sidechain compressor. So, just having that synth bus allows me to sidechain the entire synth bus based on that sidechain kick really, really easily. And don't worry too much about sidechaining right now. I do cover it later in this tutorial series. For this video, focus mostly on just the routing, which I've been talking about. And currently, that's pretty much it. I do have another mixer track that is just the vocals here.
Work, grind, shake, slide, 3 moving up, down, up, left.
And that is just sent through the reverb. It's not doing anything else other than being sent through that reverb. Originally, I have a separate project file. If you listen to this, you might be able to hear that it's a few different layers.
Work, grind, shake, slide, 3 moving up, down, up.
So I did a lot of sound design with layers, and if I hadn't done all of that in a different project, it would have definitely been bust. I would have had a bunch of different vocal layers, probably some synths, and then I would have ended up having a bus track for the vocals. But since I did all of that in a separate project, all I have is the single vocal file here.
Work, grind, shake.
And so it's really easy. It's just sent through that reverb and then through the master. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit. Just to give you an idea of some things you can do with synths and buses. In the end, it's going to be very much up to you what you actually do. There's certainly no right way or wrong way at all to do it. It's just whatever works for you, whatever achieves the result that you want to achieve. So for me, I wanted to do the parallel processing and then also be able to process those sounds as a single sound. So essentially I did that. I made that happen using mixer routing. I wanted to be able to sidechain the entire synth bus. So I did that using routing in the mixer. And essentially that's what you do. You use the routing, you use buses, you use synths to achieve whatever you want to combine the sounds in whatever way you want to process them in whatever way you want to, and to, of course, organize them in whatever way you want to. But hopefully this just helped give you an idea of how it can work. Maybe inspired something, or just helped clear things up a little bit.